Hello folks and welcome to Men and Motors. I'm here today in not so sunny Devon to take a look at the BYD Dolphin. Now BYD might not be a brand that you're overly familiar with, but they're actually one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. You may have already seen the Atto 3 on the roads in the UK, which is a slightly larger crossover kind of vehicle. The Dolphin is their go at the small car market, and this is really quite a compelling package. Here we've got one with 265 miles of range, and it's really well kitted out. Let's take a closer look, shall we? Boot space is competitive at 345 litres. You do have an adjustable floor height there, but it's not the most convenient of boot spaces for getting things in and out of. Certainly a little bit of the real estate is eaten into here. And despite the fact that we don't have quite as much overall capacity as we'd see in a Cupra Born or a VW ID3, it does fare well against things like the Renault Zoe, the Corsa E, and of course the Aura Funky Cat. Now the Dolphin's certainly no slouch when it comes to overall performance. You get 150 PS of power. We've got a 60 kilowatt hour battery which you can charge from 0 to 80% in just 43 minutes at fast charger. And you've also got a 0 to 60 time of 7 seconds. Now the overall design of the Dolphin feels quite safe. It's certainly not going to be as controversial as something like a Funky Cat, despite the fact that this one's in this fairly funky two-tone paint. What do you think? Would you like to see something a bit bolder, or do you think they've hit the nail on the head here in design terms? One of the highlights of the Dolphin has to be the interior, which is a great design. Now, there are some hard materials in here, but they feel hard but not cheap, if that makes any sense. Sometimes you feel some of these hard plastics and they feel like they're going to last all of about 10 minutes. This doesn't. It feels robust. It feels well screwed together. You've got this lovely sort of suede-y, leathery material up here. A handy little holder there where you can put a phone or maybe some loose change. We've got 3 USB-C sockets and a 12-volt charging socket under there. A useful little cubby, a couple of cup holders which are quite small, nothing particularly flash going on with those. We've also got a wireless charging pad here, really nice armrest in just the right place for me, and quite a lot of storage underneath this centre console as well. And under here we've got a handy little gadget to cut your seatbelt with in the case of emergency. The steering wheel's very well designed. It feels great under the hand, nice use of different materials. Thumb controls are all sensible and laid out in a fairly intuitive way. We've got a nice high-res little driver information display here, but the real star of the show, of course, is this large central screen. Now, there are those that like the sort of landscape approach to these things, as you would find in something like a Tesla, and I think we can definitely tip a hat to Tesla when we look at this. And there are some that prefer it the other way round, like in a Ford. So they're both catered for here, folks. You might feel that's a bit of a gimmick, but there are people that prefer one way or t'other, and certainly for some applications it's just more natural to have it one way or t'other. It also gives you a little bit of theatre that you don't get in many modern cars, so I'm all for that. I think it's a great idea. The screen's actually nice and crisp and bright and clear, and despite the fact that things like your aircon controls are built into the screen rather than having separate physical buttons and dials for them, and your volume, you know, the only place you can adjust that is sort of up here on the steering wheel. Despite all that, this works very well, and it's certainly one of the more intuitive systems to use on the market at the moment, I would say. BYD have done really well with this interior. A number of companies have failed. They've either produced interiors that are really dull and bland and boring, or functionally they're a disaster. You know, they're a nightmare to use. BYD have done very well with this. It's really well considered, it's really put together, and I'm a big fan. As we jump into the back, it's another good news story. In this model we've got this huge panoramic roof which lets in loads of light. Otherwise it might be a little bit dark in here, but it's really nice and bright because of that. You've got 2 USB-Cs down here. No rear air vents, which is a little bit odd possibly, but there we go. As you really get to appreciate those nice sort of racing bucket type seats from the back here as well. You've got individual pockets there to put mobile devices in, plus a larger pocket. Once again, Quite hard but interesting materials and textures have been used, and it really just feels a little bit different in here, but not different in a look how crazy I am kind of way, different in a good way. We've also got a nice big central armrest here with a couple of cup holders built in, completely flat floor, which means you could sit 3 adults in here, although you are going to be fighting for a bit of shoulder room, folks. BYD are currently opening a number of franchise dealerships in the UK, just like this one, BYD Southwest in Exeter. Now, once we get the little Dolphin out onto the road, you're immediately impressed by just how effortless this thing is to drive. And it makes town driving an absolute breeze. Some modern cars with their fly-by-wire steering can feel a bit disconnected for the driver. You know, it can feel like, although you're pushing the car in the general direction, it's making the finer adjustments for itself at times. That's certainly not the case in the Dolphin. It's very light, but it is direct. You do feel like you're in complete control of the car. The front end feels a bit light, and that takes a little bit of adjustment when you first start driving the Dolphin. Not necessarily in a negative way, but it's just something to be aware of. Manoeuvrability is brilliant, so you've got no problems sort of parking this in even the tightest of spaces, and it's got a very decent turning circle, something that seems to be lost on quite a lot of modern cars. Something else that's been lost on a lot of modern cars is a rear wiper. Luckily, we've still got one here. Generally, this is a very impressive little car. Perhaps on the driving side of things, where it lets itself down a tad is with the amount of cabin noise you get. There's a fair amount of noise coming from the tyres. Obviously there's no engine noise because there's no engine, but certainly if you get this out onto the 60-70 mile an hour roads, you will find wheel noise and wind noise a tiny bit intrusive. But in fairness, that's the case with a number of cars in this class. Now, I set off this morning with 265 miles of range predicted by the car. It's very rare that you charge an EV up to 100% and actually find it quotes the stated range figure, and it did in this. I expected that to fall away almost immediately. Now, admittedly, I haven't got aircon on, and that would affect the range normally. But I expected that range to drop down basically as soon as I started driving. It hasn't. I actually arrived 12 miles later at my destination with 253 miles of range. That's right, the range figures are very accurate. I have to say the suspension in this car is brilliant. I'm going over some really quite crashy, bumpy road at the moment, and you only really feel the absolute biggest of divots in the road. I'm going over a little speed hump here, and you know, you can feel it, but it really doesn't throw you around at all. It soaks up the bumps really well, but it's still not really wallowy in corners. They've done well with this one, folks, really well. Whilst you'd never really call this a driver's car, it certainly gives you a bit of fun. And it's a more enjoyable driving experience in my book than something like a Corsa E, a Renault Zoe, or an ID3 for that matter. So in summary, folks, we've got a small EV that's great fun around town. It's more than capable of taking on those longer journeys with that 265 miles of range. It's not going to cost you the earth to lease, to buy, to run. What's not to like? Well, as I said earlier on, the cabin noise can be a little bit intrusive, particularly when you're on faster roads, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. Aside from that, there aren't too many downsides for this car. It's got a really well-spec'd, well put together interior. It's just nice and easy to use. The word I keep coming back to is easy, because living with this car is a piece of cake. It's really easy to drive, really easy to park. The infotainment system works brilliantly well. It's a massive thumbs up from me on this one. And if you ask me, would I take one of these over an Aura Funky Cat? Would I take one over a Corsa E? Would I take one over a Zoe? Over an ID3? Yes, I would. Thanks ever so much for watching, folks. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please leave a comment in the video description. What do you think of this two-tone paint? Let me know. And please subscribe to Men and Motors if you haven't already done so, and look out for more great car reviews coming up soon. And also, go and check out this video over here. You're going to like it. I know you are.